pessoal! Hoje estamos em mais um Oceano em Foco, o nosso podcast da Hidromares. E hoje é um podcast super especial porque a gente vai ter a presença de um dos representantes aqui da marca Hidrobios, o Julian. Ele vai fazer com a gente o podcast um pouco em português, um pouco em inglês, e a gente vai tentar aí trazer para vocês o máximo de informação sobre essa empresa. Então, hi, hello, how are you?
Bom dia, hello, I'm fine, thank you. Unfortunately, you have to survive with my rather broken English because I don't speak any Portuguese, but luckily we have some guys here doing the translation, so it's a great pleasure for me to be here. It's my first visit to Brazil, so great opportunity, and I had the chance to have a look around Santos yesterday. Really nice city, and I really like the beach, I like the food, so I'm really happy to be here.
Wow, that is so nice. Bom, então a gente vai fazer aqui algumas perguntas para ele. Estamos aqui hoje também com o nosso diretor comercial, Gabriel.
Obrigado, estou muito feliz aqui de estar aqui, muito agradecido pela visita do Julian aqui na Hidromares. Já fizemos algumas visitas à universidade também que já foram muito interessantes.
Isso aí. Então eu vou, para facilitar a comunicação de todos, fazer a pergunta aí em português e o Gabriel vai trazer ali as questões em inglês. Então, para o Julian, né, a gente gostaria de entender um pouco sobre você, sobre a sua história, né, na Hidrobios e, primeiramente, sobre você.
Yeah, well, my name is Julian Von Borries. I'm a graduate engineer, so I have a master degree in mechatronics with a focus on mechanical design. I have a wife and 2 children. My daughter is 18, just finished school and waiting for the application for studying. And my son is 16, he has still 3 years to go in school. We all live in Germany in a small village, around about 60 kilometers from Kiel, where Hydrobios is located. 60 kilometers sounds far, but it's not that far. It just takes half an hour to come to the company and go back at home at the evening. So really easy going. How did I join Hydrobios? It was really by chance. In Germany, when you study at universities of applied sciences, you always have to do some practice during the studies. And most of my colleagues were looking for really large companies with well-known brands in the area. And I decided, no, I want to do the practice in a very small company. And additionally, I was looking for a company working internationally, simply because I had the idea that I can learn much more in such a company, because then I get a really good overview how a company works, and not only some departments, but really have a look at the entire company, and that really worked. Luckily, I could provide some benefit for the company, because during studying in the 1990s, I focused on computer-aided design, which in three-dimensional computer-aided design, which at that time was not very common, simply because the hardware and the software were extremely expensive. So at that time, only really huge companies could afford to run these systems. And luckily, just half a year before I asked for practicing at Hydrobios, I bought two-dimensional computer-aided design software, but nobody in the company was able to operate it. And so they asked me, okay, if we hire you for practicing, can you introduce that computer-aided design software? And I said, well, I didn't work with that software, but I will do. And I did, and that was my entry into Hydrobios. And a very good friend of mine warned me before I applied for practicing at Hydrobios. He said, well, just keep in mind, when you put a single step into that company, you will never leave. And he was completely right. So I'm still there. It really makes fun. While after practicing, I wrote my master thesis at Heidelberg, designing a specific instrument. Afterwards, I started on a project basis for 3 years as a design engineer, and well, then over the years, things developed somehow, and well, nowadays I'm on the one hand responsible for all technical related matters at Heidelberg, so technical director, and additionally acting as general manager, simply to have a backup, because both of the general managers are traveling a lot, and so when you travel, you know some things can happen, and we just want to make sure that the company is completely operable, even if one of us is not available for a longer time. So that's about me.
Queria ouvir um pouquinho mais agora da história da Hydrobius, já que você mencionou um pouquinho da sua história na Hydrobius, mas vamos ver quando começou a Hydrobius, como começou, o que vocês faziam e onde estão hoje.
Yeah. Well, the history of Hydrobius and Hydromaris is quite some years old, but it's just a very short time span of the entire history of Hydrobius, because we are really proud that I think we are one of the oldest, if not the oldest company in the area of marine sciences instruments in the world. The history goes back to 1927, so it's nearly a century. In 1927, a precision engineering guy started a small company in Kiel, and from the very beginning he focused on designing and producing simple sampling equipment for the local Institute of Marine Research at the University of Kiel. It was just a local supplier, and they were just 2 or 3 guys, but they did quite well. So the business developed, and they were able to get in contact with a huge company in Colonia in Germany, mainly focused on import and export. And so this company started also to develop international connections on a rather low level in the first years, but developing. And in 1960, the founder of that company, the company name at that time was Walter Schweder Precision Engineering, wanted to retire. And so he was looking for somebody to continue with the company. And that's the date where the grandfather of the current owner of Hydrobius joined the company. His name was Hans Fischer. He was an engineer by education, had been working for in medical industry at Braun, the company Braun in Melsungen, but someone decided he wanted to run his own business, and then he simply jumped on that chance, that possibility, bought the company. So since 1960 it's a family-owned company, completely owned by the Fischer family, and he rebranded the company to Hydrobius. So in 1960 we started with the name Hydrobius, and from that date we not only developed more instruments, but also developed our own international connections to scientists all over the world. And that's something we still do. That's also one of the reasons why I'm in Brazil currently. Because, well, for us it's very important to have a really close contact with the scientists, with the end users, because they do the daily work, so they operate our instruments. They are the experts for our instruments. We just design them, of course we test them, we can maintain them, but they are really the experts on the daily basis how to operate. And that's why we really need this close contact. And additionally, they trigger us for new developments. because, well, some new topics pop up, scientists jump on it, looking for instruments, and if they do not find instruments, they hopefully ask us if we are able to help somehow. So quite a lot of instruments we produce nowadays have been designed upon specific requests of scientists. Sometimes it was really just one scientist asking, well, I need a very special instrument, can you do it? And then we evaluated it and said, okay, it looks like a very interesting instrument which will have a broader application in the future. And then we simply started, okay, yes, we do it. Sometimes we also design specific instruments just for one project. That also happened. But mainly we try to design instruments which somehow will have a broader application. Starting in the 1960s, we developed international contacts. We invested in more design capacity, and over the years we saw the need that we also need to introduce electronic controlling into our instruments. So we also started to establish an electronic design department, which is today operated by 2 engineers. In mechanical design we have 2 engineers. Additionally, we do the controller programming nowadays on our own. So what we now do is we really design and produce the entire instruments in-house. Really the full chain from discussing with the end users what they need, discussing the details of applications via the mechanical design process, via electronic design process, mechanical production, electronic production, controller programming, assembly of instruments. We have a quite huge stitching workshop to sew the plankton nets, so they are really sewn in-house. All sewn according to a specific order, because our customers can choose the mesh size. So we have a variety of mesh sizes for plankton nets, starting from 5 microns up to 1 millimeter mesh size. And that's simply a variety of, let's say, around about 50, 60 different mesh sizes, and therefore we just produce the plankton nets when we receive an order. And of course we also do after-sales service, on the one hand in-house, but even if needed or wanted remotely, so by phone, by video conference, by email, but even via our distributors. We are really lucky to have a variety of experienced resellers, distributors in many countries who are really able to do the first after-sales service on their own. And if it gets tricky or complicated, or if it turns out that there is a bigger damage, then of course we will handle it. And last but not least, we also like to travel. So we don't say if you have a problem or if you want to have a training, you need to come to us. We also can come to our customers for installing instruments, for doing a training, even doing repair. If it's hard to ship an instrument back to Germany, we have some countries where it's really tricky to export the instruments to hydrobias and then send them back again after repair. We are not fearing traveling abroad. I personally like it very much, so it's really a good thing for me that I can combine well, a variety of interests. On the one hand, I'm really a technician by heart. I like traveling, I like diving into other cultures. I like to taste food in a variety of countries. I like to meet really, really interesting, high-ranked scientists all over the world. Sometimes you have some really surprising meetings. I can remember quite some years ago I was invited to take part in a short research cruise at the Persian Gulf from the Iranian government. And before the departure there was a big party, and one of the most important people, or the highest ranked person at this meeting was the Vice Prime Minister of Iran, and in conjunction Environmental Ministry. She was Masumi Ebtekar, probably known by some people when you go back to the capturing of the US embassy in 1972. She was the interpreter of the students. So that was really surprising, and it was a really interesting meeting. She's a really highly intelligent lady, fluently English, and yeah, it was really a pleasure to meet her there. So that's something you cannot plan. That just happens if you travel, right? And that's something I really, really, really like. Yeah, so a short glimpse on Hyderabad today. Today we have since 1st August, 21 members of staff. 8 people in the mechanical workshop, so simply machining the parts, producing the components for the instruments. Then we have an electronic lab of 3 people, so 2 people for the design and 1 person for assembly and integrating the electronics board into instruments. 2 design engineers, 2 service engineers, and I also help out if I'm allowed to, if I find the time. Yeah, because simply I really studied technical matters because I really like it, so I try to keep my hands on the instruments too. Same, by the way, goes for Mark, the current owner, Mark Fischer, and also general manager, of course. He also really likes to have his hands on the instruments. Summing up, we are all engineers in the company, and we all like to have dirty hands. Yeah, and then we have 3 person for international sales. Sounds to be a quite big sales department for such a small company, but you know it on your own. Paperwork for export can be really, really time consuming. And we have to follow specific rules, not only from Germany or the European Union regarding export, but we also have to follow a lot of regulations on the other end for importing goods to some countries, and that simply leads to the fact that we need to have a quite big sales department. So from 21 people, 3 just for sales. Sounds a bit strange, but it is needed. Yeah, and then we have 3 people in the net sewing workshop, and I hope I did not forget anybody. If so, I'm sorry. Yeah, in general, we're exporting, let's say, to all countries having coastline or having larger lakes or rivers. So simply everywhere you will find natural or artificial waters, you will find our instruments. We just have very, very few exceptions which are simply based on sanctions from the EU against few countries where we do not export, and that also makes our sales department quite busy, because we also have to make sure that nobody tries to circularize the sanctions. So buying instruments to one country where we are allowed to sell and then transferring it to a banned country, that's something we also have to keep in mind. It simply causes sometimes a bit of headache. But so far it works. And yeah, I think the most important thing we are currently developing is quite new technology, which is in development for the long run. I think we can talk about this a bit later. That's an approach of in situ fixation of water sampling. And probably a short overview of the products. Well, if you have a look at the marine technology, that's this kind of cake, a circle. From this circle we have a piece, something like this, which is related to marine sciences. And from this piece, just cut a small slice, and then that's us, that's sampling. So our focus is really taking samples, water samples, plankton samples, sediment samples, bottom samples, etc. And additionally providing measurement instruments for this purpose, and also some accessories for microscopy. So that is what we do in general.
Muito legal essa história, muito completa, é tanta coisa, quase um século de história. É realmente impressionante, né? Como vocês conseguiram manter isso? Eu queria perguntar assim, quais são os diferenciais que vocês veem nos produtos e na forma que vocês atuam para ter todo esse sucesso, não só na Alemanha e depois expandir para o mundo todo?
I think there are two main points. One point is our understanding is that we provide reliable tools for the daily work. So even if we are doing some sophisticated stuff, we try to keep it simple for the user. So that's the main thing. And we do not try to save the last cent. We say, okay, first or highest requirement is reliability. Because we know when you're out at sea, especially for longer cruises, and your instruments fail, you do not only use ship's time and money, you also lose data, and that's the worst thing that can happen to the scientist. And I think the second, or no, it's 3 points. The second point is to be fair with our customers. So we are not running after the fast money. We are not selling something when we are not convinced that what we sell fits to the requirement of the end user. So we always try to figure out what does the end user really need. And if we are not able to provide some really fitting instrument, we openly say it. So we don't say, okay, take this one, it will work. No, if we are not convinced, we openly communicate with the customer and say, okay, we don't have this kind of instruments. In some cases, we are able to care for some connections to other instrument suppliers. In some cases, we start to discuss, shall we shall we do some kind of special design, etc. The third one is simply communication and asking customers, meeting customers, looking where are they aiming to in the coming years. Because that is for us the chance to see, okay, there is a new topic coming up, and there we probably need to do some developments. So, for example, I think the first connections to scientists starting with microplastic analysis goes back to 2010 or 11. And that was a time where this topic was completely off any public knowledge. And now we started to develop some instruments, not only plankton nets, but also for quite a while we produced a sediment separator for bottom sampling. And that was clearly before also the scientific community jumped on that topic. So that's also a part of the success. And last but not least, point number 4, sorry. 1, 2, 2, 2. That from the very beginning, or at least from the 1960s, we established international connections. Because as an instrument manufacturer, you cannot survive from just Germany or Europe. I would say Germany and Europe in total cover approximately 30 to 40% of our sales, annual sales. So we need the rest of the world to survive. And of course, we need to earn money that we can still continue, and that we also can continue to provide service even for really, really old instruments. So, for example, the day before yesterday, we visited a lab, UNESP, and UNESP or USP. They are operating a rather old multinet from 1997, so it's 27 years old, and we still are able to provide service for these old instruments. We are able to provide spare parts simply because we do it all in our company. So I think that's, in total 4 points of success.